Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Serge Courtois. Serge is originally from Luxembourg. He attended the Berklee College of Music, studying music production and engineering, as well as performance on the drums. After attending Berklee, Serge worked full-time as an engineer at Igloomusic in Burbank, California, where he worked on notable projects for television like Last Resort, Califonication, Revenge, movies like Robocop, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Birdman, for which he was nominated for a Grammy for sound production and mixing. Serge has also worked on voiceover for many big-name clients like Disney, Lucasfilms, Marvel, as well as several game companies like Valve, Blizzard, and many more. After leaving Igloomusic, Serge became a full-time self-employed mix engineer working remotely in Luxembourg, and he has since developed a plugin called AuxCord. Some of the notable acts that Serge has worked with include Nick Jonas, 21 Pilots, Backstreet Boys, Avril Lavigne, Liam Payne, Carly Rae Jepsen, Baby Rexha, Elisa Cara, and many more. Please welcome my guest today, Serge Courtois.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming on. Thank you for your time.
Oh, sure. Totally.
So, Serge, having worked on so many notable records, what project stands out to you as a memorable milestone in your career, and what did you learn from that experience?
That's a good question. I think the Friday mix I did for Riton, it became a huge hit afterwards, and it was one of those really last-minute songs where they asked me, I believe it was on a Friday night, they asked me, hey, can you do this tomorrow on a Saturday? And I was like, sure, why not? And they just sent it over. I did the thing, and it was we mixed it very quickly, back and forth very quickly, and sent it off, and that was it. Cool, okay. And then it became this huge hit that, so many streams and TikTok videos and everything. I thought it was memorable because it really taught me that every mix or every song could become it's potentially a huge song. It could be, so because sometimes you have the songs that they take weeks, and the production, they go back and forth, they re-record vocals and everything, and then it kind of doesn't really do a whole lot. And then you have the other ones like this one where you're very tempted to be like, you know what, I have plans for the weekend, but yeah, sure, let me just do it. To really treat every mix and to mix every song to the best of my abilities. That was kind of
it's like that, yeah. The lesson of judgment, right? Because sometimes you can just one take it, right? I've heard vocals where it's like, that's it. You don't need to do anything to it or comp it. But then there's times where it really needs that love to get it to that point where it feels effortless.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, totally. So yeah, this was like I want to say effortless thing. So, and it felt rushed from what I saw, but yeah, it turned out all right, I think.
So do you have any advice for mix engineers who want to climb the ladder and work with more established artists?
I think it's doing the best you can on as many songs as possible, because you never know who knows who. So it sometimes surprises me how, two people, I've worked on two completely different projects, and then they turn out to be best friends or something like that. So it, in my opinion, it's never say no to a project. Do it the best you can, and always give it your all. Because I've done that where you mix for very, very little money or no money, and you want to say no, but still you kind of you want to do it, but then don't just do it half-heartedly, but really give it your all. Because then,
if you're going to take on a project, you gotta give 110%.
You have to commit to it. Yes, exactly. So, yeah. So that's what. And then I think it's that it's also a little bit of luck, as it always is. Some people, it happens very early in the career where they meet 2 or 3 people who just happen to know the right people, and you're in. And for other people, it takes a few years. But yeah. Anyway, that's what I would say: to always mix every song you can get your hands on and give it your all. It's kind of generic advice, I guess, but yeah.
No, that's great. So do you want to talk a little bit about your studio? I see some really beautiful red panels behind you and a diffuser.
Oh, my pants, yeah.
Some NS10s and...
Yes, my Gazowskis. Yeah, sure, totally. So this studio is actually funny that you mention it, because we're actually weeks away from completely redoing it.
Nice.
So this was, it's kind of a long story, but when I moved to the house that I live in now, we had this huge flood a couple of years ago in Germany. I don't know if you know, we saw that or heard about that. There was like these huge floods, and we were kind of part of that. Nothing happened, fortunately, but that being said, it was like a whole lot of chaos around here for a couple of weeks. That was right when we moved. So I had all these elaborate plans for the studio to build a wall here, build there, this. And then we didn't have any electricity for a while. And I had to there was like a whole bunch of problems with moving to Germany. So there's like a whole lot of, like, I could talk hours about this. Just long story short, I had to get it up and running in as quickly as possible because projects started piling up.
Yeah.
So for my old studio, I just put up these red panels, really just absorbers, a bunch of diffusers, same on the ceiling, and the back wall too.
Did you make these panels?
No, these are bought. There's a couple here that you can't really see that I built myself. But then I have acoustic treatment-wise, I have this Trinnov ST2 Pro. I don't know if you're familiar with the Trinnov calibration thingies.
Yeah, I looked at it. You mentioned it in one of the other interviews. Yeah, I looked it up.
Yeah. And that is actually doing a whole bunch of heavy lifting in this room.
Okay.
That coupled with my main speakers are the Guzowski Swiss GS3As with the sub. And then, yes, like you mentioned, I have the NS10s. I have some Avantones, and that's pretty much it, speaker-wise. Yeah.
And then you have an Atmos setup as well. You're using Genelecs, the little ones, as kind of your surround speakers, right?
I do, exactly. The reasoning behind the small Genelecs was, and that was just my reasoning. I figured, well, if I put any other type of speaker up, it's going to sound different than my mains, right?
Yes.
So I would have to get like a full, complete mega sound. I'd have to buy like 5 more pairs of the Guzowskis.
It would be insane, yeah.
Yes. And first of all, I don't have the money to do that. And second of all, it would also, you need a whole bunch of space for that. And also a new calibration thingy. And the costs just rack up so much that I don't think that would be feasible, really. So I thought, well, what I really need the surround speakers, well, I call them surround speakers, the Atmos speakers, let's say, is just to do my placement of the objects. So I thought, well, how about I just get some small Genelecs, I calibrate them to the best of my abilities with whatever I have, and I use it to place stuff, just quickly, back, front, top, down, whatever, ceiling, and then the main EQing, if I need to do that, I'll just fold it down to like a 2.1 or so I can work on my Guzowskis.
Okay.
And that's kind of how I do. So I don't really do a lot of EQing and when I have it panned to the back.
Right.
That's a mistake I did at the beginning, which I'm not going to do anymore.
Okay.
But yeah, so that was kind of the reasoning behind getting the small Genelecs that fit, that don't blow out the budget. And yeah, they do.
So
they work great.
How many of them do you have? I've heard of 5.1.2 or 7.1.4. What's your setup?
Yes, 7.1.4. Yeah, so
that's
I
a
have
lot of speakers.
Yeah, it is exactly. So there's the 4 ceiling Genelecs.
Wow.
Then there's the 2 back ones, the 2 surround ones, I guess.
Yeah.
The left, right, and then there's my Guzowskis left and right, front, and then the center one, and the sub. Yeah, so that's how I have it. Yeah, and it works great. I mean, it's a whole bunch of checking on the AirPods too. So it's not just this that matters, but yeah, I think this setup in the end helps me do my placements quicker in Atmos.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about the standards of Atmos mixing and how it's used to place things, or how it's different from regular stereo mixing?
Yeah, sure. I think the main difference is that stereo you can really go crazy. You can like try stuff. You can, because that's going to be the mix. That's what's going to be out in the world, right? So if you want to pan, I don't know, if you want to pan a hi-hat to the left and a guitar to the right, you can do that, right? I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But with an Atmos mix, you're kind of tied to the stereo mix. So if the mixer panned the hi-hat to the right and the guitar to the left, then it has to stay that way.
That's what you have to do, yeah.
That's what you have to do. So you really don't have that much freedom. If you have a typical song, let's say you have your kick, your snare, your bass, your vocal, your lead, has to be centered. Main instruments that play throughout the whole song, kind of like more in the front. And yeah, the rest, you're kind of just panning back, panning up on the ceiling a little bit. And that's kind of all you can do panning-wise, mix-wise. So really the challenge with Atmos is keeping the energy level the same. Because you're not really going through a master bus, right? So that's kind of the challenge with Atmos, is getting it to sit right, have the energy, and translate on different speakers and headphones and stuff like that. Yeah, that's kind of the challenge.
So we talked about the challenges and the opportunities of Dolby Atmos. Has this format influenced your approach to music production or mixing at all? Has it inspired you kind of going in to do anything different?
Let me see.
You talked about like a Radiohead album, and that would have to be the thing to, like,
Right.
Do you have any ideas of what that would look like, or what would be necessary?
I think what would be necessary to really have an awesome Atmos album would be if they produced the songs in an Atmos studio, in an Atmos environment, because most people are not, right? They are just producing in a stereo environment, and then an Atmos mixer just kind of makes it Atmos. So yeah, I would have whoever. I was just saying Radiohead, but like some sort of more experimental band, let's say, artist who works in an Atmos studio and really plays around with panning and having things fly around on the ceiling and stuff. Because there are some demos out there, some Atmos artists, and it is pretty cool. It's very cool, but it hasn't really reached mainstream yet, I think. So yeah.
Yeah, you were saying that you had a higher demand for Atmos mixes a couple of years ago, and that it's kind of died down.
Yeah, I think like with everything, there's the demand has probably kind of maybe tapered off a little bit, but supply has really risen a lot. There's a lot of mixers like myself who invested in a small studio, or some people didn't even invest, but they still mix Atmos, because it ends up on the AirPods, so you can do a lot with that. Yeah. So that's it used to be that I got a lot of Atmos mixes at some point, and now it's kind of I get the occasional ones, yes, definitely, but there's also now studios that specialize in Atmos mixing, who do nothing but taking the catalog, the universal catalog, and converting it to Atmos. So there's more like smaller breadcrumbs for the rest of us, I guess.
Right. So would you say that having expertise in the Dolby Atmos setup has become a prerequisite for being recognized as a professional mix engineer in today's music industry?
I wouldn't say it's a prerequisite, but from a business standpoint, I think it would be wise to look into it, because when you get to mix a stereo song, a lot of labels and companies want you to also take care of the Atmos then. And since you already mixed it, you know the song, you can, work off your session, you can bounce out stems if you need. So I think it would be wise to look into that and, take care of those Atmos mixes yourself.
Yeah, totally. So can you share some insights into the process of mixing for bigger named artists? How do you balance their creative vision with your own expertise to create an appropriate sound?
I would argue that working with a more known artist or producer is sometimes easier than with a lesser known or a person who's just starting off, because throughout the songwriting and production stage, they already flushed out all the ideas they don't want. So what I get is really flushed out, very clear idea of what the song should sound like. So it's really a lot of these, they are so well thought out that it's I don't even really hear anything that I would do completely different.
It takes a lot of the guesswork.
No, exactly. Whereas if you're working with a maybe lesser known producer, or who doesn't have that much expertise, which is totally fine, but they give you stuff, files, and I hear it different, or I think like, okay, they wanted to do this, but then they wanted to do this, but they really didn't know how to do this other direction. So there's usually more notes with lesser known artists than big artists, big producers, like a couple
Comes
notes,
with experience
maybe
and the amount of production that's going into it.
Exactly. Like 2 rounds of a few notes, like, oh, just guitar up a little here, blah, blah, blah. And that's usually it. With like lesser note, it's usually like pages of notes and can we try this? Can we try that? Which is fine, but it's a little more work.
Let's talk a little bit about your AuxCord plugin. Is there a specific incident or challenge in a studio environment that inspired the creation of the plugin?
Very first idea behind AuxCord was for me to have an easy way to record Spotify songs or references off title, whatever, into my Pro Tools session.
Yeah.
So that was really the idea, because I always have a session, a reference of a released song out that's in my Pro Tools session that I can switch to, just to kind of check levels and EQ and stuff. And it always annoyed me that there was no easy way to do that.
Yeah,
and
having
so
to
I
drag
thought,
the
if there
file
was-
in and find it or whatever.
drag the file, or like if you want to record it, it's always kind of a hassle.
Yeah.
And that's when I thought, oh, there should be a plugin. And I found a developer, a programmer who helped me out with it. And we went through a whole lot of iterations until we landed on AuxCord, what it is now, that has opened up quite a few different use cases that I hadn't thought of at the beginning, just the whole streaming your audio from your phone to Pro Tools or to your DAW really I think it's pretty cool. But it's also quite a new concept to wrap your head around. I have a lot of people who have a slightly hard time understanding what you can do with it. Like AuxCord is not meant to replace sending files from your phone to your computer. Obviously, that's quicker and easier. But if you have those apps on your phone, but you could like record stuff off there that you can't get your hands on those files, right? Even songs,
Right.
I guess you could download if you can still, I don't know, can you download iTunes? I guess so. I haven't done it in a while. But you can get your hands on that. But other streaming, even apps or games, whatever you have on there, you could stream the audio to your DAW and record stuff, and sample stuff, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I really think of like a production session or a songwriting session where everyone's kind of, giving references.
Yes.
Or how about, something that sounds like this. And if everyone can connect to one virtual aux cable, right? And then they can make a queue of references or whatever. People can pull up Spotify. People can pull up a game for audio or whatever, It doesn't matter what it is, but you can share it and you can listen to it on the speakers where you can get a balanced perspective of it.
Exactly. Yeah. I have a lot of producers who use it for exactly that. They have a couple, they have an artist and a couple songwriters, and he just says, you know what, connect to AuxCord, and he just hits record, and whatever is being played on their phone, be it a Spotify or like a voice memo, and he just records it all. So then when he gets to start on working on the song, he can like go back and listen to, what was that again, that idea he had, or what was this, what was that? So that's pretty cool. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
having more people connect to it than just one, right? Because usually I have like one cable lying around. And so
would this be something that each individual songwriter would own, or would the studio own it?
The studio.
Okay,
The studio owns AuxCord, and the other people in the studio, they just connect through really AirPlay. That's what it is.
Okay, yeah.
So it's built in your phone. You don't need an app. And it's like the same as connecting to a Bluetooth speaker
or something. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
That's smart.
Yeah.
With your experience in both studio engineering and software development, where do you see the future of audio engineering evolving, especially concerning innovations in software tools and AI?
That's a good one. It for me at least, it comes in waves. There's like every time I see a new plugin, AI mix plugin or whatever, it's like my heart rate goes up a little bit. I'm like, oops, am I going to be out of a job? But then I hear the stuff that comes out, and I'm like, okay, good, we're safe for a while. Yeah, I know,
you hear
exactly.
People complain about it, and you're like, okay, you're not that stoked on
it.
Yeah,
exactly. I heard one thing once that I thought was very good with AI, that if you ask AI to create some music, it creates music, the same music that's out right now, right? It hasn't really, I mean, that's what I read, that it has a hard time creating new stuff that is not out yet, because it just samples from the stuff that's out already. So I think that's a very good point, that I think it's, if you're in the business of just making songs that sound like other things, be it for like commercials and maybe those radio spots, where, we want it to sound like Taylor Swift, and we combined with Blink 182. I don't know, I'm just making stuff up. Yeah. But then, if basing the idea of existing songs. And I think it could be dangerous in the way that AI could take, flush out ideas quicker, and then, working with songwriters and producers. So yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure.
Was there any essential piece of gear that when you left Igloomusic and the LA studios that you were like, I need that? Like, what was the first piece of gear you got for your studio?
The first piece of gear that I really put money in was probably the Trinuff and my speakers.
Okay, yeah.
And the
Room
Trinuff,
calibration.
to me, is still the Trinuff as a mixer. The Trinuff is I would have bought the Trinuff even just to use it with my like HS80s or so. You have HS6s or 8s too in the back?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have totally bought the Trinuff to use with those. And then maybe the Gozowskis at a later point, but because I just thought the Trinuff made such a big difference for me. And then, well, there's still one piece of gear I would love to buy at some point. It's a Millennia Pre, but I don't really. Yeah. I besides this, what we're doing right now, I rarely record stuff. So, and I think spending $5,000 on the Pre just to record my own voice is maybe a little much.
It seems a little silly.
Yes, exactly.
When you think of it long term like that,
Yeah, exactly.
So, the music business is a constantly, moving environment. How do you stay in touch with yourself and keep your path clear? Do you want to talk a little bit about your journey from being a drummer and a mix engineer?
I think it came naturally in the sense that I always just wanted to mix. That's what I wanted to do. I mean, I've never really been in the studio before I went to Berklee.
Okay.
And I was just very interested in the technology behind music, the pre's and faders and stuff. I really had no idea about any of that. Drumming, of course, played drums all my life, so I always thought I'm going to be a drummer. But then at Berklee, that switched. I really realized I'm not a good drummer, but this music technology stuff kind of comes easy to me. And then being honest, kind of going back to that, being honest to yourself and being, you know what, I don't want to toot my own horn here, but you see, like, you know what, I'm always like good in those classes, and I'm really not good in those classes. Nobody wants to have me play drums in their recording, but everybody wants me to be the recording engineer. So, and kind of listening to that and just being honest to yourself,
Go in where the demand is, really. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's kind of what happened. And then at the Igloo too, I was recording a lot, but I always wanted to mix. I always just wanted to mix. And then once the mixes started picking up, I was like, well, I have to do this now. And so that's still, mixing is the number one priority, really, besides family. But yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Oh, totally. Likewise. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this. Is there anything that you want to say about your plugin, or do you want to do like a little check out AuxCord? Do you want to say anything?
Well, to everyone who wants to save a couple of inputs on their interface and doesn't want to deal with the impedance shenanigans of the consumer line to pro line and gain and blah, 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 check out AuxCord. It's great. It's awesome. And we're coming out with a new plugin. I'm coming out very soon, actually. So keep your eyes out.
It's a delay plugin, I hear.
It is a delay plugin. The best delay ever made, I think. It's a pretty cool delay. It's a pretty cool delay.
I love delays.
Yeah, me too.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Cool. Well, hey, thanks again.
Take care.
Alrighty.
Thank you so much for watching. If you want to learn more about AuxCord, I'll leave a link in the description where you can try it out for yourself. And I'll leave a link to Serge's website if you want to learn more about him. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. And what do you guys think of the new space? Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to see more videos like this one.